Evening, guys, and welcome to the 5th episode of What the Amateurs Can Learn from the Professionals. And today I've got a very inspiring guest. And before I introduce him, I just want to say that we had a previous guest called Gloria Hooper. You may have watched the episode, and she was at the World Athletics Relays a few weeks back, and she took gold medal in the 4x100 relay. So congratulations to Gloria, and good to see that your season started off really well as you're preparing for the Olympic Games. So today's guest is a 50k British record holder, and he's got a 5k PB of 14:22, a 10k PB of 30:23, a half marathon PB of 1:06:16, and a marathon PB of 2:18:51. So I'd like to welcome Dan Nash onto the episode. So thanks for coming on tonight, Dan. Oh, I've unmuted you now. Oh,
thanks. I unmuted myself, and then you unmuted me as well. So no, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. So firstly, let's just talk. I've mentioned some of your achievements, so let's just talk about your achievements. So firstly, the 50k British record holder. How does that feel, and what was it like when you won it? Well, when you got third.
Yeah, no, it was pretty cool. It was my first ultra, and my first time representing Great Britain properly, which was the reason I did it. I sort of I'd qualified through I got my record at the 50 kilometer world champs, and I was representing Great Britain, and I was racing marathons. That was my thing. And then because I ran 2:18 at Brighton, I qualified to be put forward for selection for the 50k world champs, and thought, well, I might never get the chance to represent Great Britain again, so I better give it a go. It's only a marathon plus 5 miles. How much harder can it be? And then training actually didn't go that well for it. I've been struggling in the build up. I've been not very consistent. I've been ill a bit. So I wasn't expecting much from a race at all, and then hit the start line and actually felt great and played it sensible, didn't push too early, and then finished and realised I'd broken the British record and come third at the World Champs. So it was a pretty cool feeling.
Oh wow! So when you broke the record, you didn't actually know you were on the way to breaking the record. It was only when you finished you realised you did it.
I hadn't really been paying attention to the time, to be honest. I wasn't really familiar with the splits that were needed to run the record. I knew what the record was. The record was 2:52. But like I was just sort of focused on racing, and I didn't even think I was going to get a medal until the last mile. I was I think with 5k to go, I think I was about 8th place, and then just moved through on the last lap of the course, and I think I moved into 3rd place with a mile to go, so like mile 30 of 31. So it was all sort of normally, like in a marathon or a longer race like that, you know what's happening pretty soon, like a mile, 2 mile, 5 mile out, you know that you're either on for a good day or not. But actually I didn't all sink in really until I'd crossed the line.
Oh well, it must have been like amazing feeling to have a record, and then also to like take a bronze medal as well. So huge well done. So you obviously did 50k. You're quite young. So what made you? So you've got a really good you've got an amazing marathon time, 2:18:51 at Brighton. What made you want to do marathon at a young age? Like, because you got pretty quick times in the shorter distances.
Yeah, I think for me, my basic speed is really poor. Like I'm a proper slow twitcher. Like I've not got any fast twitch fibers that making my legs at all. My girlfriend, my fiance, has run quicker than me over 400 meters, and she's quick, but like I just haven't got any pace really. And I do think I was always just knew that I was naturally suited for the longer stuff. I think I did my first marathon when I was, I think I was 22, 23, something like that. So I sort of started quite early, and I really enjoy them. I like the longer distances. Well, I like the variety, to be honest. I'm hoping to do some track races this summer. I'll still go race 5Ks and cross country, and I've even done some indoor races over the last few years. But yeah, I think I always get drawn back to the longer stuff. I think it's what I enjoy and what I'm best at, I think.
Okay, so you're still really young still, and like you've said, like about your time. So we said about, I mentioned about your marathon time, Brighton. I think you've come second, haven't you, at Brighton Marathon? And
yeah,
I think,
I've done Brighton twice. I came second the first time. I was caught at mile 25, which was really annoying. I was leading, led the whole thing, then caught at mile 25, and then I thought I had a kick left, but then went to put my foot down, and I didn't have a kick left. I was knackered. So yeah, second at Brighton, and then fourth for next year where I ran my PB. I've done Manchester Marathon. That was my first one, which was a bit of a disaster. I've done the Cornish Marathon, and I started the Elite London Marathon back in October, but unfortunately I was a DNF. Yeah, I've done a few marathons plus the 50K. So yeah, I'm 27, so I've got a few done.
plenty of time. Yeah. So I saw talking about that London Marathon. The elite one. I saw that. Am I right in thinking you did a cheeky tweet to London Marathon organisers saying, "Can you get me an entry? I'm a British record holder."
Yeah, it was something like that. Yeah, like, I think they announced that I was supposed to do the original London Marathon in the April, and I was on the championship start entry. But then when they announced that it was going to be an elite only race and it was being postponed to October, I put out a tweet basically saying it'd be really nice to add some more domestic athletes to the field, because I think it was originally just for 20 or so elite athletes from an international field, not that many Brits, but actually if you're going to put on the whole race and go through all that rigmarole of designing a course and all that, I just basically said it'd be nice to add a few more, and luckily they did add me, but then unfortunately I had a bit of an injury going into it, and had a bit of a bad day and ended up putting out 20 miles, but it was still a really cool experience. I was really grateful for the chance to race, because so many other people hadn't been able to even start a race, let alone line up alongside Eliud Kipchoge and the likes of those athletes.
Oh no! I mean, it was good that you did it, because really you deserved your place, and that must have been amazing to see that running with those runners. You must have been like
Well, I didn't see them for very long. I'll be honest. It was after I think after a mile I couldn't see them. Probably less than that. Probably about 400 meters I couldn't see them. But it was again it was still I was in the queue for the Portaloo next to Kipchoge. So that was pretty cool.
Wow,
pretty motivating on the start line.
That is pretty cool. So so you do your marathon. So you've got this PB. Obviously, you're still quite younger. You're young, and how much quicker do you reckon you can get? Because I'm assuming you can get a much quicker.
Yeah, I think over the marathon, which is like what I'm probably still concentrating on really. Like I reckon I can go. I'd like to try and qualify for the Commonwealth Games for Wales, and the time for that is 2:15:30, and I think that's doable. Sort of running out of time to actually get the qualifying time, and it's trying to find a race as well. But yeah, I think I could go a bit quicker over a short distance. I think I could go a bit quicker over all the distances, but everybody says that. Everyone says, "Oh yeah, I can go quicker." As soon as they've run that PB, everyone says, "Oh yeah, I could have gone a bit quicker, a bit faster." But no, I think I could. I'm in a dilemma because I'd sort of like to go longer and do more of the ultras, but actually I'm watching the BMC races on the track and the 5K races that are on the track. But well, there was some really good races yesterday I was watching, and that really inspires me, and I really like to go and do some fast stuff there. But yeah, I'm just gonna keep mixing it up, I think, and do some short stuff, do some long stuff. But yeah, hope to get a bit faster across the board.
Okay, we've got a question. We've got a question here from Chris. So he's asking, what's your running goals for this year?
Yeah, hard, like everyone else. It's hard to know because it's still hard to know what race is going to happen. But I do want to go and do some track races. I'm down to do the Elite Bristol 5K in a couple of weeks, so do some short stuff. But then I'm toying with the idea of doing my first 100K in August, potentially. Still haven't decided yet. I'm still a bit up in the air, but yeah. So maybe do some short stuff and then build to some longer stuff later in the year. And then there's marathons hopefully happening in September, October. So maybe I'll do Brighton or London marathon if they go ahead.
So you haven't decided which one you'll do, Brighton or London yet?
I think London works a bit better. I haven't got an entry yet. I need to try and sort that out. I think championship start entries are still available. Hopefully, I haven't really looked into it, but yeah, probably London, because that would give me a bit more. If I do 100K, I think that gives me a bit longer to recover after that. But I definitely will do a marathon in the autumn, come winter.
Okay. Right. So let's talk about. So when did you start running? So obviously you're quite young. So when did you start? And and how and what made you like it?
Yeah, well, I guess in running terms, I'm not that young. I think I'm 27, and I basically can't remember a time when I haven't run. My parents both were runners, and we did this thing called we were part of the Hash House Harriers, which you may or may not have heard of, but it's a bit obscure. But it's an international thing, but it's based on and there's groups all over the world, loads in the UK, and it's based on the paper chase. So somewhat a hare will go out and lay a trail, and basically all the runners have to go and follow the trail and find it. It all ends up at the pub at the end, so it's quite a social thing, very family orientated. So it's not about performance at all. It's all about inclusivity and just an excuse to get out in the countryside, do a bit of running, and then go back to the pub for a drink, lemonade if you're a kid, obviously. So that's like, and I before I could run, I was pushed around in a buggy. And when I was old enough to run, I'd do a short route. And when I was old enough to go a bit faster, I'd do the longer route. And yeah, that's how it started. And then primary school cross country, and my mum led the primary school cross country group, so I was involved pretty early with that, and haven't looked back. Just kept racing really since I was probably about 7 or 8 years old. So yeah, young, but I feel like I've been doing it for quite a few years now.
Oh, it's impressive, really, because a lot of people don't get into running until later on in life. Like I didn't like it at school, so I only got into it when I was 29. So so you've got all that behind you. So let's talk about training. So I've got a few questions of training. So firstly, I'll ask a question is how has COVID impacted your training? Like how have you kept motivated as well?
Yeah, I mean, motivation hasn't really been an issue with me, to be honest. I really like the process of training. I'm doing a PhD in exercise physiology, so I'm really interested about different types of training and how you can optimize your training. So I really actually enjoy just doing the process, and I enjoy just going out and running, to be honest, in my own time. I never listen to music. I just don't even know what's going through my head most of the time. I'm just out in a bit of a trance meditative state, I'd say nearly. But so I just really I really motivation for me has never been an issue. If anything, I'm too motivated and do a bit too much sometimes. COVID, right, it's been weird in that there's not been in many races, and I do love to race as well. So that's one thing, but and not having access to a track and a gym, but actually in terms compared to other sports, it's not nowhere near as bad at all. Like compared to the triathletes, the swimmers who have had pool access for months. We've had it. I'd say us runners have had it pretty easy. Instead of going to a track, I've just been running around the park, doing reps around there, and going into the hills. So I think I've actually found it's worked quite well for me, because I think I've not over raced, and I think some people race every weekend, and I think it's not the best way to train. You just take too much out of yourself, and you can't do the training properly because you're always resting up for a race. So yeah, I think it's been all right actually. It's been okay. I've managed it quite well.
That's good. It's good. I think I do think the runners have got away lightly with it as they can train. Yeah, we'll talk about your triathlon with Welsh, working with Welsh Triathlon in a bit. Anyway, we'll talk about these questions now. We've got a question here. It says, what is your average mileage? So so do you run every day? Do you have rest days?
Yeah, mileage fluctuates quite a lot over the year. I'm building back up at the minute after having a bit of I had COVID early in January. I'm still sort of recovering and building up from that. But our max I've done is I think 130 miles, but that's like a one-off week. I'd say an average is probably about 90 to 100 to 110 maybe if I'm in a marathon prep cycle. I tend not to have days off. I just don't respond very well to them. Like I'll feel really sluggish the next day, so I tend to probably just do an easy run. Like I train twice a day most days, so I might just go out and do an easy hour, but really easy.
Yeah.
And I found that sort of works better for me. I try and if I'm feeling like really tired and I'm overdoing it, I'll have a down week, or I will have a day off. But I tend to prefer to just do a bit less rather than in complete rest. But I think it's just finding that balance and what works for you. But yeah, quite a lot of mileage. I'm complementing it with quite a lot of bike stuff at the minute because I'm trying not to rush back into doing so much running, and I quite like the cycling as well. But yeah, as I said, I really like running, so any excuse to do a bit more running is great.
Yeah, so that was what I was going to talk about. So, about your cross training. So, first you said you had COVID. So, how long did it take you to recover? Did you have it quite badly?
Well, yeah, I didn't have bad symptoms. I actually recovered. I never felt that bad during the initial infection. But it just took me quite a long time to get back to normal. Like day to day, I'd be fine, and then I'd go for a run and I'd feel horrendous. So I ended up having about 4 weeks off running, and then even then it took me quite a long time to build back up, which is a shame because I was supposed to be doing the Olympic trials and I was getting quite fit, but then yeah, I had to pull out because of all the training I'd missed. But yeah, actually, yeah, it was. I know people have had it a lot worse than I did.
Yeah, it's definitely not a nice thing to have. At least you're all right though. So you do a lot of you do a lot of training. So we talk about cross training. So firstly, Sean's got a message, a question here, and he said, "What does a typical training week look like?" Now, before you answer, I know you mentioned about cycling. Do you do a lot of cycling? Or do you do any swimming? Yeah, I'll leave it to you. Like, tell me, yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm not a fan of the swimming, unfortunately. I really, getting wet, getting cold doesn't appeal to me. So no triathlons for me. But I do quite enjoy the cycling. That's something I'm sort of using a bit more of my training at the minute. Basically, because I'm trying to be a bit more sensible, trying to build up the miles more slowly, but I can complement that with some more cycling. And I have previously done quite a bit of cycling. I've done a few cycle tours. I've done Land's into John O'Groats, and I cycled around the Black Sea. So I've done a few trips, but actually a typical week running wise is I do a hard session on Tuesday and Friday. So that might be intervals and a fartlek, or normally something a bit more speed orientated and something a bit more controlled tempo like, and then long run Sunday, and then lots of easy stuff in between. Try and do a bit of S&C, but now I'm swapping in a bit of cycling just instead of a running, just to make sure I don't get injured. But that's something quite new. Normally it's just running really.
Okay. Do you think the cycling helps your running when you do cycling?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's a really good tool if you can get a bit more volume in a safe way by adding cross training. I think it's really useful. And we've seen lots of people running really fast off of lots of cross training, like Beth Potter, who ran the 5K world records, and she's a triathlete. And at the same, a lot of the triathletes that I work with, they're not running mega miles, but they're running really well. So I think running is if you want to be better at running, the best thing to do is running. But actually, if you're prone to injuries, if you're coming back from an injury, if you just can't, there's some reason why you can't run as much as you feel like you need to, then actually cross training is a great way to substitute some volume in, I think.
Yeah, because we had Ali Dixon when she was in the last episode. She mentioned that she was injured and she needed to train for Boston, so she did a lot of training to strengthen her quads on the bike, and then I think she went and ran a PB on Boston Marathon. So I do think that you're right. There's definitely got some benefits there. So in regards to we go back. So in regards to your training, so there's a few questions here actually. How do you So Colin here said, how do you adapt your diet when you're prepping for an ultra distances?
So not massive experiences in the ultra world because I've only done one, but what from I tend to do most of my long runs fasted. So I tend to not eat. I'll just get up and do the long run. And this has been there's quite a lot of research out there saying that's good for increasing your ability to burn fat as a fuel source, so you're less reliant on your glycogen and your carbohydrates. So to start with in a build up, I'll do that and have fasted long runs to try and increase that ability to burn fat. But then you also want to be able to take on loads of carbohydrate during the race itself, and you need to be able to train yourself to do that. Actually, if you practice taking on carbohydrate during your training sessions, then your gut gets better at absorbing the carbohydrates, and so you definitely need to do some practice around that. So that's sort of how I periodize my nutrition, and to start off with in a bit of a block, but now I try and train without fuel. But actually, as I get close to the race, I'll practice taking on as much carbohydrate as I can, and I'll purposely try and take on. I'm looking to take on about 90 grams of carbohydrates an hour, which actually, if you can't try and do that whilst running quite fast, is quite challenging. And to start with, it will really upset your stomach because you've got to build up to it. But actually, after a few runs, it really does help. And actually, come race day, the more carbohydrate you can take on, the better, really. And I think that's one of the reasons why I had a really good race, is because actually I did nail my nutrition. I had drinks every 5K, and we had personalized drinks. We were lucky in that respect, so I could have my mix of drink that I was using, and yeah, it was great at taking on loads of carbs. So yeah, I think that's definitely something you need to nail if you're doing marathons and further.
That's really interesting. And my wife's actually got a question regarding like gels. So she says, what gels do you use for your long runs, if any, and what you use in the race?
So I prefer to go with drinks than gels, because most of out of the marathons that I've done, I've been quite lucky. I have had the luxury of having my own drinks provided. Where it's a bit different, obviously, if you've got to run with them. Gels are a bit more convenient, but I like the SIS Beta is what I've been using for my last, all the marathons I've done. That's what I've used. And no, actually, that's true. For the last two, I've used the SIS Beta, and I think that works well for me. But a lot of people like More10 gels and drinks.
Yeah.
I've not tried the drink, but the gels, I've tasted them. They're pretty horrible to digest, I think, but they seem to work well as well.
Yeah. You got to find what works for you, haven't you? Really, it's trial and error, isn't it? Really.
Yeah, definitely. And actually, I think they're all a bit gross. They're all a bit sickly, and especially once you're at mile 20 of a marathon and you've already consumed loads of the drink or gel. They all taste horrible. So I think it's just getting used to it and just being able to tolerate it, and finding what works for you. I think there are some that seem to be better than others. So actually, ones that are glucose and fructose mixed together, because you absorb them differently, it means you can absorb a bit more carbohydrate, whereas some of them are just glucose, which aren't quite as good. So there are ones that are better than others, but actually I think the top, they are pretty similar.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, when I did a marathon, I only did one marathon, but when I trained for it, and the gels, I just didn't like them at all. I thought they were horrible. But
yeah, and the thing is, gels, like, you need to take them with water, really. And actually, if you can get it in a drink as well, then you're sort of getting your fluid and your energy in the same bottle, which is handy. But yeah, I think sports nutrition is just a bit gross, a bit horrible, really.
Yeah. Yes. So we, in regards to your training, we talk about it's a question that comes up quite often is, how slow do you run your long runs?
So I tend to run my long runs a little bit faster than the rest of my mileage, especially if I'm like getting ready for a marathon. But I'm quite lucky in that I've gone through lactate. I've done quite a lot of lactate testing, so I know where my zones are in terms of actually what intensity I should be doing them. So I'm looking to keep my lactates at baseline level, so they're below my lactate threshold. They're slower than marathon pace by about 30 seconds slower than marathon pace for my long runs, and then it could be quite a lot slower than that for other runs. So for me, my long runs are probably they're normally about 5:50 to 6 minute miling, and then easy runs could be anything from 6 minute miling to 7 minute miling, maybe a bit slower. So it's a lot of it just depends on how I feel. If I feel pretty worn out, then I'll go a bit slower. If I'm feeling fresh, I'll go a bit faster, but still trying to keep it controlled, slower than marathon pace. And actually, I know that I could sustain it for a long period of time if I had to.
Okay, that's good. That's a good good answer. So, because a lot of people they run their long runs too fast, and they run it. Some people run it at race pace, and then they wonder why they burn out. But yeah, I mean, what you said is if you feel tired, you slow down. Whereas I know some people push ahead, won't they? So
it's I think it's people. I think people. It is hard to know what sort of intensity you should be running from that, but I think you should be able to talk. You should be able to breathe pretty comfortably. Like your perception of effort shouldn't be 5, 6, 7, 8 out of 10. It should probably be more like 3 or 4 out of 10 most of the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's hard to know unless you've actually been tested. It's quite hard to know exactly where. But yeah, I think I have seen the opposite. Some people run really slow for their easy runs and actually could probably run them a little bit faster. So actually, it's hard. It's a hard thing. I think you just work out over time. Once you've been running for a few years, you intuitively find what sort of intensity you can sustain.
Yeah, and the different zones and stuff like that. So obviously you do all this training, and then how much do you spend on recovery and nutrition, obviously, so that you can recover?
Yeah, I think the most important things in terms of recovery are sleeping and eating and nutrition. But it's not rocket science. I think I try and get at least 8 hours a night. I get grumpy if I don't. So the more sleep I can get, the better.
Me too.
And nutrition, I don't have any special nutrition, but I just try and eat a well-balanced diet, really. And I am using the enhanced recovery drinks, which I think it's quite a new company, but they give me some support, so I get the enhanced recovery drinks, which I use after a hard training session, or if I haven't got time to get a meal in straight away. But my first choice is really just real food, plenty of fruit and veg, lots of carbohydrate, especially the amount I'm running. I need loads of carbs, yeah, and some protein. I think people actually tend to worry a bit too much about can worry too much about their nutrition, and actually nutrition's important, but probably the training is the most important thing. And then try and eat well, and you eat well and sleep, and you'll be 90% of the way there, I think, in terms of recovery.
Yeah, that's just really good advice. Yeah, and did you use any like foam rollers or recovery boots, any of that to try and aid?
No, I don't use any of that. I think personally, like, the evidence out there for their effectiveness is a bit dubious, and it doesn't seem to do very much for me. I just I can't be bothered, to be honest, to go around rolling around on the floor after I've done 20 miles in the morning. No, I prefer just to sit down and have a rest.
That's fair enough. So my wife's got another question. So, is there any food you would avoid just before race day?
Yeah, I think that is important, actually, because I can get a really bad stomach. And actually, the first year I did Brighton, where I came second, and got beaten with a mile. I got overtaken with a mile to go and ended up second. The reason why I got the guy caught up with me was because I had to take 2 stops in a Portaloo because I had a dodgy tummy. And I think he beat me by like 20 seconds, and I was definitely lost more than that in the Portaloo stop. So I think actually what you eat before is really can be quite important, especially if you're doing the longer stuff. But I think it's basically keeping simple carbohydrates. You don't want starch, you don't want complex carbohydrates, you don't want whole grains, you don't want things with loads of fiber in before a race. You want really easily digestible things, especially on the morning of. And my go-to before marathons is crumpets and honey, actually, because crumpets. So basically, it's basically just flour. Like there's not much fiber in there, and sugar is just sugar. You absorb that really quickly, and that seems to be working for me. So I've stuck with it.
That's good. I mean, I've heard some crazy stuff from some people that work for them that I would never try. But yeah, if it works for you, that's the main thing, is that you just got to find out what works for you.
Yeah, definitely.
So you've got you're studying for a PhD, or have you finished it? Or you?
No, I'm about halfway through.
Okay.
Halfway through.
And you so you're doing that, and you work for Welsh Triathlon as well.
Yeah, so my PhD is in exercise physiology at Cardiff Met, but it's part funded through Welsh Athletics and Welsh Triathlon. So as well as doing my PhD, I'm also and I'm doing some research around endurance training and monitoring of endurance training. But I also work as a physiologist supporting their endurance athletes. So the endurance runners at Welsh Athletics, and then I support the National Triathlon Performance Centre in Cardiff.
That's really good. And obviously, you said before you don't want to do triathlon. You sure working with Welsh Triathlon hasn't convinced you to try and do?
I've done a duathlon before, and I did a couple of triathlons when I was a kid. But I was always last out of the pool. Didn't enjoy the swimming, and I do like the cycling, but I'm a bit of a purist and just like the single discipline of just going out and doing the running. But yeah, maybe in the future I'll try some more duathlons or something. But yeah, running. I think running would always be my first love.
That's fair enough. So is this your so people that don't know, is this your full-time job, or do you run full-time, or you just study? You studying and
no, I'm a PhD student who runs. I'd say yeah. It's nearly a full-time job doing all the running, but actually I'm in a lucky position that actually my PhD is funded, so I get a stipend, but it's enough to live on, and it's quite flexible as well. Like if I can as long as I get my work done, I can do it whenever, so I can train at lunchtime. So the fact that it's a very sporty university, I get quite a lot of support through them. I've got access to their gym and their track and testing in the lab and stuff like that. So no, I'm lucky.
I know, you're very lucky, and then you get to train as much as you want as well. So that's a good thing. Got a question here from Colin. What would your training plan look like if you're prepping for a 5K? I know you mentioned you want to do some 5Ks, and you had a PB. You've got a PB of 14:22, and obviously it sounds like you want to go and try and beat that this year. Yeah. So what if you're running 100 miles a week normally? Yeah. What would your prep be for it?
Yeah, I still think getting in a good volume of training is really important, even if you're racing with shorter distances. Certainly 5K, 10K. You look at what the world's best are doing, and they're running a lot of miles. So still running quite a lot of miles, but the emphasis will shift a bit. So I'll do a bit more down to 5K race pace, and probably, to be honest, even when my training is probably quite similar, regardless if I'm training for a marathon or for a 5K race, certainly in that base phase period. And I think a lot of my intervals and my tempos and threshold stuff are in that sort of half marathon to 10K pace range. And then only in the last sort of few weeks before like the goal race, whether that's a 5K or a 10K, when I do some more race specific stuff. So for me, yeah, I think it's just doing, for a 5K, I'll just do a few more shorter sessions in the run up, make sure my speed's in a good place, do some 5K pace stuff. I quite like one of my the sessions I quite like doing for like 5Ks is 2400s off 30 seconds recovery. And I feel that like gives me a good reflection of where my 5K pace is at, but it's nice because the short reps mean it's easy to get through. You just keep ticking them off. You're not grinding out for long reps. I find that quite good. But if you keep your recovery short, you don't run them too fast, because it's easy to run them way quicker than 5K pace. And you also get like an elevated heart rate for the whole thing. So actually, instead of it being like 20 times 400 meters, it's really 30 minutes of having a high heart rate and high oxygen consumption. So I think it's good training stimulus. So that's what I tell myself anyway. I like it as a session that I can compare as well, because I do it so often. But I know where I am in terms of my 5K ability just by keep doing that session over time.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, that's a good answer. So it's very interesting as well to see people's different insights of their training and how they train. So a question I was going to talk about as we talk on to 5K. I mean, we touched on it briefly. What did you think of when Beth Potter broke that 5K world record? I mean, I know it's been broken since by 2 seconds, but what did you think when you saw it? Did you think it was the shoes, or do you think it was just? I mean, I know she's a fantastic runner. What did you think when you saw it?
Yeah, I mean, it's like the shoes are a contributing factor. That's why everybody's wearing them. Like they do make you more economical, they make you faster. So it is partly the shoes, but the shoes aren't going to explain minutes; they're going to explain seconds. So like, I think it's a trend of actually we're seeing quite a lot of people who are certainly triathletes who are running very well. Like Beth Potter, is running great in the 5K. But she also went to the Olympics in the 10K, so we know she's a great runner.
Yeah.
But then you've got Alex Yee as well, who's a triathlete who runs very well. There's quite a few triathletes around, and I think actually it just shows you that actually you can, as long as you're doing your key sessions, like running, then actually you can probably get a lot of your volume just from swimming or cycling or cross training. Probably doesn't matter too much, I don't think. It was still a bit of a shock though. I think the triathlon coach who I work with texted me literally as soon as she crossed the line saying, "Can't believe she ran that. That's crazy."
Yes.
It's
an amazing time. Yeah, very, very impressive. I mean, the shoes obviously is something. I mean, everyone wants to wear them because they're making you faster. But it's the same as like if you're in cycling or triathlon, you would get the best bike you can to get the time. So it's not cheating or anything. It's just it's just you want to get the best equipment. And if it's going to help you, it's going to help you, isn't it? Really, like
I sort of wish that we didn't have these new shoes because, like, for example, my marathon PB, I went from 2:22 the first time I ran Brighton to 2:18 the second time. The first time was in normal shoes, and the second time was in the next the 4%, the Nike 4%, and I was fitter as well. So I don't know how much of that improvement was fitness and how much was the shoes. Obviously, some of it was definitely the shoes because we all know that they work and they make you more economical. So it's sort of comparing yourself to previous times and comparing yourself to other people like in history. Like it would have been nice, I think, if we didn't have the shoes, but at the same time, like there used to be cinder tracks and now we've got synthetic tracks, and shoes have got better even if you don't look at the carbon fiber plates. If you look at what we were running in compared to what Roger Bannister was running in, like there's no comparison. And actually, like you said, other sports like cycling, you look at a cycling bike now compared to even 10 years ago, right? They're completely different. So I think running's just catching up really with everybody else in terms of technological developments.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say the swimming with the swimming suits that got banned in the early 2000s, where they designed them and everyone started wearing them and broke the world record, and then they banned them. But then people started beating the world records now without them. So it does make like whether the shoes, whether if they stop the shoes, whether people in the future will go and break the records. But I think
records will continue to be broken, I'm sure, regardless. And I think now it's not an issue either as well, because like when these shoes first started coming out, only some people had access to them, but now everybody basically has access to them really. And they are expensive, which is a bit annoying, but actually running is still quite a cheap sport and most people can get their hands on a pair. And I think training is still the biggest factor. It's not like you can put on a pair of shoes and suddenly you're an Olympian. They're making a small percentage difference, 4% if you believe the research, maybe a bit less.
Yeah, but I mean, you've got to put the hard work in I mean, if you don't put the hard work in, you can't just turn up with the shoes and think you're gonna,
No,
gonna ace
definitely
it.
not.
So here's a question for you. So in regards to when you were growing up as a child, who was your hero or inspiration?
I used to, when I first started getting into athletics properly, I'd say, and was watching it on TV, I used to really like, I remember watching Mo Farah and Chris Thompson. One of my favorite races to watch which I used to be really sad and go back and watch races on YouTube. And one of the races I really used to like watching was, I think it was the European Championships in 2010 or 2011. And Mo Farah won the gold. It was like his first major gold. And Chris
Yeah.
Thompson, who just won the marathon trials, got the silver. And I found that really inspiring. But actually, now looking back, I think there's definitely a bit of a shadow around Mo about is he dodgy, all these things that came out about Alberto Salazar. So yeah, I'm not sure if I exactly look up to him anymore. Like he may well be clean, but you can't say. So I don't think I really had a hero as such, really. Certainly there were some people that, yeah, I think I was more inspired by the people they're the ones that you get excited about when they run a fast time, or your mate, your training partners, your club mates or whatever. I think that's still one of the things that motivates me now is actually seeing the guys I train with or people in the same club as me, and I see them running really well. And I think that's more inspiring, to be honest, than someone I've never met.
Yeah, that's very true. And I mean, especially, I recommend anyone to join a running club, and just it opens you up. It's like they're open for abilities, and you can you meet you meet friends from there, and they push you along as well, and you improve. And it's a good way to train as well. And talking about club, would you recommend people? I know I've said it, but would you recommend people to who was just starting out? What piece of advice would you give them?
Yeah, definitely. I think running clubs are the most inclusive groups of people you'll ever find. I think I've been part of the club since I was about 11 years old. I think 12 years old, and I'm part of Cardiff Athletics now, which is where I live in Cardiff, and it's great. Like it's great camaraderie. Things like relay events, it's great, but actually it also teaches you how to train. Like there's people there who've got so much experience that you can learn from. There's some really good coaches out there associated with clubs, and it's just I think it's nice going to a road race, and trying to do your best and do well. But actually, if you go as part of a team, it's just a completely different atmosphere. And actually, it turns an individual event into much more of a team event with camaraderie and stuff like that, and team prizes and things. I think it just makes it much more fun, and you'll meet so many really nice, like-minded people.
I totally agree with that. And from my experience, that's what I've found as well. And especially like the cross country, when you run the cross country, you're trying to get the place in for your team. So it doesn't matter where you finish, you're just trying to get this place for team. So it is very much like a team sport that way. In regards to people wanting to join new runners, what advice would you give to new runners and tips if they were just starting out?
I think that the most important thing is patience, really. Like try and if you're new to running and you're suddenly really enthusiastic and get excited, just try and measure it. Don't jump in, do loads of running for a week and either get injured or burn yourself out just to burn out that enthusiasm. I think that's a really good tip. I think a good tip for everyone is just actually progress things really slowly. There's no rush. Take your time. Like there's no rush to build fitness. Just don't put too much pressure on yourself and keep things pretty easy. I think second tip is probably join a club. Because they're going to sort of people it's going to be much more fun if you're running with other people, and you'll learn how to train a bit better. I think they're the two most important ones, really. Just actually take your time, keep it don't put too much pressure on yourself. Keep it easy, and find a club and some other people to run with.
Yeah, and I agree. And being patient is really is the key, really, isn't it? Because people go train too hard too soon, and they either get injured or they burn out. And
and it goes back to just running too hard as well. Like a lot of new runners really do run too hard, and you can hit. You'll be running. You can just tell people are running too hard because you'll run by them and they'll be breathing really hard. They'll be sweating buckets, and that's not how you enjoy running. That's if every run is just a slog, then you're running too hard. Slow it down. It'll be much more enjoyable, and you'll go and do it again rather than give up after a week, because the best runners in the world aren't going out and pushing it on every single run, because it's just not sustainable. It's not enjoyable. You just can't do it for a long period of time. So most of your runs should be pretty comfortable. Just get out, time on feet, enjoy it.
Yeah, and not be injured, so you can enjoy it more. And
exactly.
Not be injured. So talking about injuries, have you had any setbacks, and how have you dealt with them?
Yeah, I've never had a major injury. But I've probably done most of the things that people do, like Achilles injuries. I've been doing a bit more biking recently because I had some shin pain, which I thought was a stress fracture, but it turns out, well, I don't know what it was. I didn't ever got diagnosed, but it can't be a stress fracture because I was running again in 2 weeks.
Right.
But I think it's just finding something else that you can do. Because there's so many runners out there who just love to run and don't do anything else. I think it is a great opportunity to go and find some other way of exercising if you can without pain. I think a lot of people's first response is, "Oh, I'll go and join a gym," and they'll go sit on a cross trainer. And I would not recommend going and doing that. Try and find something actually enjoyable. Like I've really enjoyed going out on the roads, doing some road cycling, but a mountain bike, even just walking in the hills, anything that's going to keep you fit, but also keep you happy, in a good mood, get those endorphins from exercise. I think it's just finding something that works for you, a way of cross training that works for you, because there's so many options out there, which swimming and cycling, mountain biking, might be climbing, it could be anything. And actually they're probably going to leave you in a better place when you eventually can start running again.
And if someone is injured, what advice would you give them? Because there's people that will I know there's people that get injured, and as soon as they get injured, they can't run, that they go into a different sport, like they go into cycling and start trying to pound that really hard. So what would your advice be if I
think the first thing is definitely go see a physio, because actually it might turn out that with your cross training sport that you love is not going to be any good for your injury. Like, it's like some Achilles injuries really don't respond well to going on a bike, so that rules that out. So I think the first thing is actually speak to a physio and work out what you can do. But then again, I think it's going back to just taking your time and being slow. Like, you can't just, like, I'm like normally running 10 hours a week, but if I suddenly jumped in and started cycling 10, 12, 14 hours a week, like some of the cyclists do, and more, then that's probably, I might hurt something else. I might start having bad hip flexors and stuff like that, because it's a different movement. So I think it's just taking your time. And actually, if you are injured, then it might be just a sign that your body does need a bit of downtime and needs a bit of rest as well. So I think just being patient, and not stressing out about it, just doing the best you can.
That's really good advice. So I've got a few more questions to ask then. Firstly, what is your views on virtual racing? Because obviously since COVID, there's been a lot of people who've gone on to doing these virtual racing. What do you think of it?
Yeah, I didn't do any virtual racing. As I said earlier, I didn't feel like I needed that for my motivation to keep training, and so I didn't do any. But actually, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing if that keeps you training and keeps you motivated, and you need these short-term goals to keep you focused and keep you moving in the right direction. Then I think they're probably a good thing to do. I think it's just taking any time with a pinch of salt, because downhill courses or really tight loops that throw the GPS off your time is definitely not is not going to be as accurate as running on a measured course, but actually, it can still be quite a nice thing to do to keep you motivated, give you a target. But I think races are starting to pop up now, so hopefully there shouldn't be any talk of virtual races for much longer. Hopefully, I think I'm certainly missing being on the start line with lots of other people, and having that adrenaline rush go through your body. I'm looking forward to it.
It's not the same. Virtual racing, it's not the same to like being in a physical race and being around other people. So another one is Strava. What do you think of Strava? Do you think it's a good thing or a bad thing for people? Because I
love Strava. I really love it. I spend far too much time on Strava, looking at my own activities and everyone else's activities. And I think it's a really nice way of logging and tracking your training. Like I used to have a training diary and writing it all out there, and I was working out how many minutes I'd run each week. But actually now with GPS, it's so easy just to log it on there. I think the enemy of Strava is when you're comparing yourself to other people all the time. I think that's ends up being a bit of a recipe for disaster if you do start like trying to do more than you're trying to match the mileage of your friend who's been running for an extra 5 years compared to you, then that's probably not going to work very well. Or just getting like stressed about people like your competitors who are maybe running faster than you or doing different things to you. I think as long as I think it can be a really good tool and can be really motivating, but it's just making sure that you stick to your own plan and don't start changing what you're doing because other people are doing different things.
Yeah, and that's really important. That's a problem. People compare themselves with others, and then they see something. Oh, he did that, and I've got to do that. And
it's like all of social media, isn't it? Like,
yeah, it is. Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's good fun. I think, but yeah, just don't stress out too much about it.
Okay, that's good. Good question. Good answer. So, last question then, before we wrap it up, is have you got any stories where your training or your races haven't gone well, and you've learned from them, then you've turned them into, and then you've corrected them, and then you've turned them into a positive next time, and you've done well out of it from learning?
I think I can't think of any particular ones. Apart from my marathon story of stopping in the Portaloos all the time, and after that I changed my nutrition, which helped. But I think race is always a learning experience, and even if you don't go well, I think certainly doing my first marathon was pretty disastrous because I'd missed loads of training and decided I was going to do it anyway, and I didn't take on any nutrition. That was obviously a bad thing to do because I hit the wall really badly at mile 18 and jogged very slowly home. But I don't think I've got any particular anecdotes, but I think it's definitely worth paying attention to your races and not just saying, "Oh, that was a bad race, I'll forget about it." I think trying to bring a positive and a learning experience out of each race is a great way of framing it and not making you despair every time you have a bad race. And also just appreciating that every time you try a new distance, it's going to take a bit of time to get used to racing that distance. Like I was a bit lucky with my 50k that I sort of seemed to nail it first time, but a lot of distances that hasn't happened. Yeah, so that was a pretty poor question to end on. So you can ask me another if you've got.
No, not at all. It's interesting because you touched a lot of it earlier, where you said about like you learned from your bad nutrition. So I mean, you learned from not taking the right nutrition. So it's all learning. I mean, every race you do and every training session, I still think you learn from it. So no, I think it was a good answer. So that's it. There isn't any more questions. So I want to say thanks for coming on to the show, Dan, and appreciate it a lot, and all the best with your season this year, and hopefully you do get these PBs and that you're after. So thanks again for coming on the show, And I just want to say everyone, thanks for watching. And I've got some more guests coming soon. So keep your eyes peeled. And thanks again, guys. Have a good evening.